So now it's my pleasure to introduce Jan Hábl. Jan is the professor of pedagogy at a completely unpronounceable university to me in the Czech Republic. So I'm sure that he will tell us where it is. I'm sure it's a wonderful place. I just looked at it. I thought, I'm not even going to try to pronounce it because I will make such a mess of it. But I first met Jan a few years ago at a conference in the Czech Republic, one of the Daniel movement weekends, and enjoyed all that he had to say and was really very touched and impressed just by his love, his warmth, his gentleness, as well as his insight and understanding. So Jan, we're really looking forward to our session with you, and let's clap as we have been doing to welcome him. It will be silent clap, but Jan, we are all yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. It's my pleasure to be here with you. Before I say anything, please excuse my funny English. It is obviously not my first language, so I will speak slowly and I will do my best. Can you hear me well? Is everything all right?
Yes, yeah, we hear you okay. Is it possible, Jan, to get a bit more light on your face though, please? You're quite dark at the moment. That's better. We see your handsome features. Thank you.
Okay. Let me share screen. Okay. This is my subject. I was asked to tell you something about Jan Amos Comenius, this man. He is 17th century thinker, philosopher, and pastor, and he was pretty amazing person. He wrote about 200 books, and he had no computer, and probably his greatest book is called in English, General Consultation Concerning Restoration of Human Affairs. This book was left unfinished. It has more than 2,000 pages. And in this book, Comenius deals with the greatest issue ever. He simply asks the key questions about human beings, about the humanity, who we are, how we are, what's wrong with us, and what can be done with humanity to make it make it better. And my task is to tell you a little bit, just a little piece of treasure from this great work. So let me ask the first question he asks. What are human affairs? That's maybe a simple question, but not so easy to answer. His answer is this. This is what makes us human. There are 7 parts or 7 fields, human fields, something that is typical for us human beings. What we do, what's our what's the core of humanity. And so it is politics, media, business, spirituality, education, culture or art, and family or relationships. This is what makes us human, according to Jan Amos Comenius. And now, second question. What's the problem with humanity? What's wrong with us? You know, the title says a consultation concerning restoration or reformation of human affairs. So the question is, what's wrong with us humans? It's maybe clear to you, since you are Bible readers, but it is not so easy question in general for people. There is something wrong. There is obviously something wrong with us. You can hear this in music, you can read it in poetry, you can see it in movies, virtually everywhere. We deal with this question. I don't know if you know this specific piece. The song was called Living on the Edge, and the song begins with these words: there is something wrong with the world today, and I don't know what it is. So I would like to tell you what Comenius says about us, what's wrong with us, and what can be done about us or with us through education. And of course, I have just 20 minutes, so it will be really a simplification, but that's where we are. I hope you can see this picture. This is the answer. This is us. I believe there is everything there. You can see the human face, the human being there, but we are something like angels and something like demons at the same time. Now, to quote Comenius, he says, we are neither angels nor demons. So who we are. I will I will quote just few key words and sentences from his greatest work, from the Consultation. Here are the key words. We human beings are absolutely amazing creatures, great potential, great minds, great will. We are able to relate to each other, to love each other, to help each other. We are creative, we can sing, we can play, we can work. We produce amazing things. We are so smart. For example, this technology we are using right now, it is just amazing. And so Comenius says, this potential that we have, who we are, that's God-given. Of course, for him, it is God-given. We were created as an images of God, so it is amazing. And when we are using this potential well, it is beauty, it is good, it is almost heaven. So here is the first word, use. When we are using it well, it is good. But the problem is we are also abusing or misusing our potentials. So consider, for example, our reason, our mind, or our will. It's almost heaven when you use it well, but it's almost hell when you use your reason to harm another being. And we are very able, we are really good in that. So the key sentence which expresses Comenius' understanding of humanity, his anthropology, his notion of human beings, is this. It may seem trivial, but it is actually quite profound. He says, humanity is not quite all right, but it is not completely lost. It is really crucial. Try to think about it like this. If you had just one part of the sentence or just the other part of the sentence, the whole thing together. Say, for example, what what would that mean if you say we are completely all right, we are perfect, like Supermans? Comenius wouldn't say Superman, he would say angels. If we were angels, what would it mean for politics, for business, for art or culture? We don't have time for all this. We will focus just on education. So if we were completely good, what are the implications for education? Of course, we don't need any education. And in fact, you can see this in educational reality today. The more a teacher or educator believes that people are in essence good, the less they teach or train. We call it liberal education, liberal approach to education. So if we were perfect, there is no need logically for education. And now turn it around. What if we were completely lost, completely depraved, completely evil? You can imagine the evil in various ways. Again, the same question. If we were completely evil, complete demons, no education would help us. Or do you think they have an educational department in hell? So if we were perfect, no education needed. If we were perfectly evil, no education would help us. But what if Comenius is right and we are something like this? I'm sorry, I hope you will understand my illustrations. Gollum used to be quite a nice creature called Smeagol, but then something came to his life and spoiled him or changed him for evil. And so he is slowly turning into, let's call it unman, something non-human. He is losing his humanity. It is not lost completely, but he is losing it. And I'm using this illustration because this is exactly what Comenius says. We are neither angels nor demons. We are something of both, or we are something in between. That's his anthropology, that's his understanding of humanity. Bible readers would say, okay, we are images of God, but fallen into sin. But he has his own ways how to say it, so I'm just interpreting what he says. And now, since this is our situation, the key question is, what can be done about it? We are talking now about human race in general, the whole humanity. Is there a happy end? When you look at human beings on this planet, do you have great expectations? Do you see a bright future for us? Are we developing or evolving to something better and better? Is there a real happy end that we can expect? This is an interesting question. I keep asking this question my students, and whenever I lecture for public, I stop here and ask this question, and it is very interesting to hear what people say. Unfortunately, we cannot be interactive here, so I will just tell you what people say. I don't know if that will surprise you or not, but people usually say, no, there is no happy end. Our future is not bright. Our future is some kind of self-destruction, clash of civilizations or cultures, or some kind of pandemic. That's our future, but no happy end. And so I usually say, okay, let me offer you one specific hopeful view of our future, of humanity. Let me give you a hope. It is not my hope. It is what Comenius says. But what Comenius says is, you will see where the source is. So let's look at it. Here, once again, are the 7 human affairs, 7 fields of humanity. We will focus just on education because we don't have any more time. And even the whole chapter of education, you know, he wrote virtually thousands of pages on education, very thoroughly. He thought about it very deeply, thoroughly. So again, it will be just 3 simple principles which I try to kind of condense for this occasion. So here are the principles. He speaks, Comenius speaks about wholeness in education, about naturality. It must be somehow natural or spontaneous, and it must be harmony, no violence. So let's have a look at that. First, wholeness. Comenius says the whole man should be educated. And when he says whole man, he says these 3 or 4 things. A truly educated person knows what is good, wants what is good, or desires, or sometimes he says loves what is good, and does what is good. To put it into more contemporary language, it is knowing is the cognitive aspect, wanting is the volitional aspect, and doing is the action aspect of education. So you can see it is not just mind, however, mind is of course important. It is also will, and it is doing. That means it is not enough to tell children or people what is good. Somehow, and it's a little bit a pedagogical mystery, somehow you need to make them want what is good, and even that is not enough. You know, quite often we know perfectly what is good. We even desire it. You know, you can say maybe you have the same experience. Tomorrow I will start. You know, I have the will to do that, but that is not enough. You actually have to get up and start doing it. So these 3 aspects must be together. And one more important sentence. He says, okay, so truly educated man or person knows, wants, and does what is good, even if no one is looking. And for him, that is the spiritual aspect, because he says, well, even if no man is looking, of course, that's easy. But there is no such situation when you say no one is looking, because the creator who created us knows everything. We are always in his presence, so always is someone looking. So once again, when you say holistic approach, he means cognitive, volitional, action aspect and spiritual aspect at the same time. And I just want to stress that it is knowing, wanting, and doing the good. So it is moral aspect as well. I just wanted to stress that because you can see how holistic notion of man it is. And this is just the individual. You know, when you speak about an individual person, but he has another chapter when he says the whole man also means men and women, simply everybody, rich or poor, everyone. And it was quite revolutionary at the time. So yeah, we have that today in our schools, so I will just pass that. So that's the first principle. One more quotation: learning without morals is like a gold ring in a pig's snout. I believe it's clear. The second principle: education should be natural, he says, according to the nature or in concordance with nature. I hope everything will go well. We have a storm here at the moment, rain and storm. I hope the internet will be stable. So everything in this world has its own specific nature, Comenius says. Everything is made with some purpose or design. There is teleology, not theology, but teleology. That means, you know, the Greek word telos means a goal. You know, everything is for something specific. I'll give you a few examples. Whatever you see around yourself, things were created with purpose. There is specific nature. And now, important thing for education. When you use the thing, whatever it is, including human beings later, but now let's focus on those things. When you use the thing with accordance or in accordance with its own nature, it is good, it is harmony, it is how it should be. For example, you use glasses for seeing. But if you use the thing against its nature, for example, you know, my students gave me this example on one occasion. Perhaps you could use your glasses for opening bottle of beer. Perhaps that is possible, I don't know. You could do that, and if you do that regularly with your glasses, you may do harm to your glasses. You know, the truth is that the glasses were not made for opening bottles. So that's the principle, to treat or to work or use things in concordance with its own nature. And now Comenius, you know, this philosophical principle applies to human beings, and he says, and the same is true with human beings. You need to treat or use, you know, use is probably not the best word, but simply you need to approach human beings in concordance with their nature, with human nature. And now let me remind, what is our nature according to Comenius? And he says, we are something between angels and demons. So what it means in practice, in educational practice, we need authority, we need solid borders, we need discipline, because the demon in us simply requires that. But at the same time, we need grace, we need love, and we need freedom, because the image of God in us requires that. So for Comenius, if you think about it, education is basically a tool of salvation. Education or training is not just a preparation for your employment, so that you can compete in the marketplace. For him, education is really a tool of salvation. He says, when you look at these principles, he says this is how God treats us. This is how he approaches us, with authority, with solid borders and discipline. Of course, there is the law, and because we are sinners, we are trespassers of the law, we need also grace, we need love, and we need freedom. We need to be freed. And Comenius simply applies these principles to normal education. Whatever happens in school is guided by these principles. So if salvation is the goal, it implies that it cannot be forced by violence. Whether you think about the overall goal or the specific goal. For example, you cannot violently force someone to love chemistry or mathematics or PE. If you want them to fall in love, I remind you, it is knowing, loving, or desiring and doing. So if you want them to know, love, and do what is good, you cannot force them by violence. So how you do it? And Comenius says, if you want salvation, you need to win the heart. It is God's approach. This is how God is doing it. He is overwhelming us with love. He's winning our hearts. And that is exactly what you need to do in every other aspect of education. Any subject you teach, any content you pass on, you simply need to win the heart, to overcome them with love. I have some illustrations here. It works perfectly in Czech context because these are Czech fairy tales. And interestingly, all these principles, these basically biblical principles I have just mentioned from Comenius, we have them in little stories like this one. There is always a princess in these fairy tales, and these princes usually have a problem. A dragon wants to eat them, or they are sleeping for 100 years, or they are too proud, or simply they have some problem. And then there appears a prince or a king who wants them, these princes. And here is one archetype, one example. This king is called in Czech Kazisvět Čestý. I don't know how to translate it. Hopefully, King the World, spoiler is appropriate translation. And this king would take the princess against her will. He would simply violently make her to be his wife. And it is a bad king. And then you have a good king who kindly, patiently, slowly makes her to change her heart. Simply he overwhelms her with love. And in the end is the happy end. She willingly, not by force, not kicking and screaming, but she in the end loves him. And that's the happy end. Comenius has in his mind. That's the only way how to save humanity. God is not saving us against our will. He is not kicking us, into the kingdom of heaven by force. This is his way. He is winning our hearts by love. And Comenius says, and that's the principle for normal everyday education. That's how we should do it to see a happy end. Thank you for your attention.
So the first question I have here, Jan, is this: how does this approach fit into an agnostic society?
It fits perfectly. That's exactly what the agnostic society needs. We, in our contemporary educational system in Czech Republic, and I believe it's the same everywhere in Europe, our schools lost the holistic notion of human being and also lost the holistic education. And so we are mainly focused on not so much knowledge these days, but competencies. You need to have skills and competencies in order to get a good job. And Comenius says, no, that's not the ultimate goal of education. The ultimate goal is humanity as it should be. Humanity with proper educated potential. There is a way we are, and there is a way we are to be. And how we are to be, how we should be. Our good potential developed properly. And so in other words, proper human beings, good human beings, not just people who have knowledge or skills, but people who know what is good and so on, do good. And so I consider it to be my lifetime mission to keep telling this to our secular systems, that this is what we need. We need character in education, because if you have a very well educated person with great knowledge, but without any morals or any transcendence, living just for yourself, then we have a problem as a society. So what Comenius says is he's touching on the most sensitive issue contemporary school systems have.
Okay, thank you. I have another question. You mentioned that at least Comenius seemed to be saying that education was a tool to salvation, that it could help lead people toward that point. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Okay. So how does he see things changing once people reach a point of salvation? So once you are dealing with somebody learning who has been forgiven sin and has the Spirit indwelling within them, what was his concept of that person and the way they continue in their education?
You are never finished with your humanity. Even when you come to the moment when you say, I found God, I truly believe, that doesn't mean that your humanity is perfect at that moment. That's just the beginning of your salvation. Then there comes the sanctification, the perfectio, I don't know how to translate, to becoming, gradually becoming perfect, holy. And that's lifelong process. And so he speaks about, he wouldn't use the contemporary terminology for lifelong education, but very often he is considered, or he is at least mentioned, to be the father of the concept of lifelong education. But it's not the same thing. Today lifelong education means kind of requalification, to find a new skills for a potentially new job. But he speaks about continual process of changing your character, both in knowledge, morally and spiritually. You need to learn the whole life, basically. Interestingly, in his early works, he stated that there are 4 levels of education, like the basic and so on. And in his later works, he added 3 more. So there is seven levels of school. And he speaks even of school of death, basically. That's the final stage. You need to learn how to die properly. And he's got the whole chapter on proper dying. It is quite amazing reading.
Okay, thank you. Another question here. I hope I have understood this correctly. If secular society needs Comenius' approach, does secular, I think the question is asking, how much does secular society understand that it needs it? So what, I mean, you've talked in general terms, but is there a change in the way that our culture, and particularly European culture at the moment, is there a change in the way that we are seeing education, do you think? I mean, you work in a higher education setting, so you're aware of current thinking about that. Is it moving to an approach that is more like Comenius, or is it moving further away?
Well, it hasn't been moving the right direction so far, at least in Czech Republic. Interestingly, the pandemic situation opened new questions and new challenges. So it is absolutely obvious now that there needs to be some change, needs to be some reform. Our Ministry of Education recently issued a special program called Education 2030, and the best minds in our country are thinking what is the future of our education and how to do it differently, because we have realized that there is too much content in our schools these days, and we just couldn't give the whole content, the whole stuff to our children through online lessons. And so there is a great discussion about what our children actually need to know or need to do, or what they need to acquire in schools. Very important discussion. I don't know what the outcome will be, but I am trying to raise my little voice in my country and say, well, yes, we don't need to know all the rivers in Argentina, for example, in geography. there are more important things which should happen in schools, and I'm bringing Comenius on the table, and his stress on moral character and on living not just for yourself, but living in a way that is open out. He has a special idea that humanity is really suffering, is turning into something inhuman if you are self-centered, focused just on yourself. And there is something salvific, soteriological, if you open yourself out, if you transcend yourself. And that's my way how to speak to secular ears. You know, when you open yourself and you direct your attention to something outside yourself, what can you find there? Perhaps you could even find God and your neighbor.
Okay, thank you. There's another question here now. I've used Google to translate this from Russian, which is what it was sent in. I don't know if the translation is faithful, so we may have to discover that. But the question says this: you said about Comenius that he said, if you want to find salvation, you need to conquer the Father. I don't know if the word conquer has translated correctly there. Google is far from perfect. But whatever you said about that, did the questioner understand your idea correctly? Do you know what that might be referring to exactly?
Conquer the Father?
Yes. I don't know if anybody can help me there, because
I think I said conquer or win the heart.
That may be it. Yeah. So the question is, did they understand your idea correctly?
I hope so. You know, the idea was that you cannot force someone to be saved, and in the same way, you cannot force someone to become a better human being through education.
Okay. Hang on. I've just this may help or it may not. I don't know. I'll work on that. Let me ask another question. I've just got to find it. Here we go. You've been working on a Comenius project, which you finished recently. How well is it being received? Is it having some impact on the education system? Perhaps if you haven't said very much about it, you could just explain what it is that you've been doing.
Well, last year in 2020, there was a big anniversary, 350 years since Comenius' death. And since Comenius is such a big figure in Czech Republic, it is someone like Jonathan Edwards in the United States, or John Bunyan in England, or Martin Luther in Germany. Everyone knows him here and admires him. So this project wanted to restore his legacy and smuggle a little bit of Christianity into the society. So we did our best. There was a number of things that happened. I don't want to go into details, but simply we did our best to bring Comenius ideas to the society, to public. It had some impact, but unfortunately, the design of the project was killed by coronavirus, because our idea was not just to talk about Comenius, but to take the ideas of Comenius and apply them to action. So schools, classes, and other groups were invited to do specific action in their region to restore something in their environment, in their community, in their region, to do something good, not to just talk about good things that could happen, but to actually realize them. And of course, because of the coronavirus, we couldn't, or the projects couldn't be realized, or just a small number. So we decided we will continue with this project next 2 years, because in 2022, there will be 430 years anniversary of his birth. So we will again use this opportunity.
Okay. All right, Jan, thank you again.